Imagine like receiving a confirmed written receipt from your landlord that your rent is paid in full.
Right, like an official sign-off,
Exactly. You have the paper, you have the signature, you just file it away.
because you're done with it.
You'd think so. But now imagine that a full year later, a law firm sends you a certified letter and they're threatening to fine you $100 a day and just like strip your community rights.
Wow. Just out of nowhere.
Yeah, completely out of nowhere, all because they've retroactively decided your receipt doesn't actually count anymore.
That sounds incredibly frustrating.
It's wild. You try to show them the receipt and they just change the definition of the words printed right there on the page.
Well, welcome to today's deep dive, where we are looking at an absolute masterclass in shifting bureaucratic goalposts.
Yeah, we really are. I mean, we have a massive stack of sources on the table today for this one.
We do. We're looking at, gosh, dozens of internal emails, some pretty severe legal violation notices, photos of a laundry room, an Amazon product screenshot.
Oh, and my favorite part, a draft podcast script written by the homeowner herself to document the entire ordeal.
Yeah, that draft script is a fascinating piece of the puzzle.
Our mission today is basically to map out how this seemingly simple maintenance request evolved into a total labyrinth. We're talking legal threats, moving targets, procedural stonewalling.
It really is a phenomenal case study in how administrative power actually operates when it's challenged.
So let's just get into it. We're looking at a dispute at a property called the Countryside at Cumberland Condominium.
Right. And at the very center of it all is Unit 108. What starts as just a debate over a simple dryer vent.
But to understand the dryer vent thing, we really have to look at the environment where all this surfaced, right? Let's set the scene back in the summer of 2024.
Okay, so 2024. The owner of Unit 108 is a woman named Rosalind Grigger.
She goes by Roz in most of the documentation.
Right, Roz. And at this time, she's already locked in this really serious battle with her homeowners association.
Managed by a company called Sharper Image Management, right?
Exactly. Sharper Image Management. And this initial battle, it actually has absolutely nothing to do with laundry or dryer vents.
Yeah, it's about water. Severe water intrusion and mold issues inside her unit.
That is the crucial backdrop here. Based on all the correspondence we have, Roz has been dealing with these active water leaks.
Which is just a nightmare for any homeowner.
Oh, completely. And she is tracing the issue to the common plumbing lines of the building.
Which, just to explain the mechanics of this briefly to you listening, under typical condominium declarations, you own the airspace and the drywall of your unit.
Right, the inside parts.
Exactly. But the association owns and is responsible for maintaining the common elements, and that includes the plumbing lines running inside the shared walls.
But the HOA and Sharper Image Management are pushing back really hard on this.
Like, incredibly hard.
Yeah, they are insisting that the water damage inside Unit 108 and all the necessary mold remediation is Ross's individual responsibility. Like, she have to fix it and pay for it.
Which leaves Roz in an incredibly precarious position. I mean, she mentions in the emails carrying 2 mortgages, dealing with unresolved water damage.
And being totally unable to rent or sell the unit because of the building's infrastructure issues.
Right. So she's pressing management for the building's plumbing history, asking for their insurance documents, just really trying to force some kind of resolution.
And right in the middle of all these major unresolved water complaints, the HOA just pivots.
Yeah, they issue this sudden community-wide mandate.
Right out of left field. All owners must immediately inspect and repair their dryer vents or implement a temporary indoor water filter vent to prevent fire hazards.
They send out these notices warning that compliance is mandatory and fines are going to start for anyone who doesn't conform.
I have to put myself in Roz's shoes for a second here.
Yeah, tell me about it.
This is like you're arguing with your landlord because the roof just caved in and your living room is completely flooded. And they respond by sending you this formal threatening notice telling you to go mow the lawn.
Oh, that is a perfect analogy. You're trying to talk about structural integrity, and they are writing you up for landscaping.
It is such a jarring shift in priorities for her. But Roz decides to just comply.
Right, she just wants to get it over with. She engages directly with the property manager, Annie Perez, at Sharper Image to figure out exactly what she needs to do.
Just to get her name off that dryer vent non-compliance list.
Yeah, and Roz clearly states in an email, quote, "I am not able to handle another financial hit."
Which is completely understandable given the mold and water situation.
Definitely. And this brings us to the $18 fix.
The famous $18 fix.
Annie Perez, who is the official management representative, emails Roz back with a very specific solution.
She actually points Roz to buy an indoor vent on Amazon, right?
Yes, we have the exact screenshot of the product right here in our source stack. It's a Deflecto LTF dryer lint trap kit.
And the total price on that?
$18.26.
Okay, so just to explain how this works mechanically for everyone, instead of venting the hot, lint-filled dryer exhaust into the walls of the building.
Which is what the HOA is worried about.
Exactly. This kit basically redirects the exhaust into this indoor plastic container. You fill the container with a little bit of water, and it traps the lint right there inside the room.
It's a pretty cheap, common workaround for properties with compromised wall ducting.
Right. And we were looking at photos of this exact setup in the source stack. Roz buys the kit.
She installs it.
She sends photos of this silver flexible tube hooked up to a little white plastic box mounted right next to her washing machine.
And she emails management saying, quote, "Consider it done."
Yeah.
But no one is there, nor is it in use, but it has been addressed.
And then, on October 1st, 2024, at 9:20 a.m., Annie Perez emails Roz a definitive one-line statement.
Quote, "Thanks, Roz. I'll mark you as completed."
I'll mark you as completed.
That's the receipt.
In administrative terms, that is a binding sign-off. You have an authorized agent of the governing body confirming, in writing, that the mandated action has been fully satisfied.
So she has the ultimate bureaucratic shield, right? A written sign-off.
You would certainly think so.
But how does an HOA pierce that shield 14 months later? I mean, they don't send a maintenance worker, they send a lawyer.
Yeah, let's move to December 17, 2025.
Over a year later.
Out of the blue, the HOA's law firm, Laziga and Johansson, sends Roz a multi-page certified letter.
Oh, wow.
The subject line reads, "Notice of covenant violation and demand to take immediate action at 108 Countryside Lane."
Okay, let's unpack this for a second, because the escalation here from an $18 Amazon plastic bucket to a certified legal demand is just severe.
It's a massive jump.
The letter is from an attorney named Christine Cano, and she claims Roz has failed to provide an inspection report for her dryer vent.
And that she's in direct violation of the condominium declarations.
Right. The law firm is now demanding she hire a licensed HVAC specialist.
Wait, not just a specialist. They want her to run an extending video camera line through her entire duct system.
Yes, and provide a formal written report.
Which is a fundamental shift in the technical requirements.
Huge shift.
The jump from a surface-level indoor lint trap to a professional fiber optic camera inspection involves hundreds of dollars.
And the letter outlines some pretty drastic mechanisms of enforcement, too. If she doesn't comply within 10 days, the HOA threatens to levy fines.
And not just small fines. $100 for every single day the violation continues.
$100 a day. I mean, that is enough to bankrupt someone in a matter of months.
Oh, easily. And they don't even stop at fines.
Right.
They threaten to suspend her voting rights in the association. They threaten to suspend her right to use the common elements of the condominium.
It's like they're trying to banish her from her own community.
They even state they might enter her property to do the work themselves and assess all costs, including attorney's fees, against her account.
Which, just to explain the mechanics of that, if those fees accrue, the HOA can eventually place a lien on the property.
Right, which is a legal claim against the home that could literally lead to foreclosure.
That is terrifying. Just
But
terrifying.
naturally, Roz fires back. On December 20, just 3 days into her 10-day window, she sends a formal dispute.
Good for her.
She requests a hearing, which is her due process right under the bylaws.
And she attaches the receipt, right?
Exactly. She attaches that October 1st, 2024 email from Annie Perez saying, quote, "I'll mark you as completed."
She essentially asks, how are you threatening me with daily fines and loss of rates for an issue your own management previously signed off on?
It is a perfectly logical question to ask. She states, quote, "The association's current notice therefore attempts to reopen an item that was already completed, documented, and closed."
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Because you'd think they'd see the receipt and back off, right?
You would think.
But the HOA doesn't grant the hearing she requested. Instead, the administrative machinery just, shifts gears entirely.
We move into early 2026 at this point.
Right, and Sharper Image Management starts sending out new community-wide emails. But these emails aren't just about inspecting vents anymore.
No, they are demanding that owners sign a formal maintenance agreement.
And this requires a lot more than just a quick signature on a PDF. The HOA demands owners get this document notarized.
And physically record it with the county.
We really need to explain why that matters. Think of your property title like a car's Carfax report, right?
That's a good way to picture it.
When the HOA demands this maintenance agreement be legally recorded, they are permanently attaching a sticky note to the home's legal Carfax.
Exactly. So if Roz ever wants to sell the place, a buyer's title search will flag this specific agreement.
And the management email explicitly notes this process will cost the owners $200 out of pocket.
Now, you listening to this might be thinking, it's just an $18 dryer vent issue initially, and now it's a $200 fee.
Why not just pay it, right?
Yeah, why not just pay the $200, record the document, and make all these legal headaches just go away?
But look at what happens if you concede here.
Exactly. You are legally attaching a shifting HOA mandate directly to your property's actual deed.
It is basically a mechanism to force compliance by holding the home's future liquidity hostage.
It sets a very dangerous precedent for every future dispute.
Which brings us to the really dense exchange of correspondence between Roz and another attorney at the law firm, Linda Pollock.
Because Roz is still fighting the December violation notice, she's pointing out she was never given her hearing.
What's fascinating here is how the legal strategy adapts to Roz's paper trail. Attorney Pollock responds and attempts to retroactively reframe that October 2024 completed status.
Oh, this part is incredible. Pollock writes that Roz's account was marked compliant back then only because she was using the indoor vent.
Right.
But she frames it as merely a temporary fix, while the association figured out a permanent solution.
But the word temporary wasn't anywhere in Annie Perez's email.
Nowhere to be found.
Perez just wrote, "I'll mark you as completed." I mean, you can't just inject invisible caveats into a written receipt a year and a half later, just when it suits your legal strategy.
And that leads to probably the most stunning part of Pollock's correspondence.
Oh yeah, tell me about it.
Roz repeatedly demands her due process hearing regarding the December notice and those $100 a day threats.
Because she still hasn't gotten it.
Right. And Attorney Pollock's response is just a masterclass in procedural stonewalling. She claims that no hearing is necessary because, quote, there has been no adverse action taken.
This concept honestly boggled my mind when I read the sources.
It's hard to wrap your head around.
How can a law firm send you a certified letter titled Notice of Covenant Violation, threaten you with fines of $100 a day,
Threaten to take away your voting rights.
threaten to bar you from the common areas, and then when you finally call their bluff and demand your hearing, they just wave their hands and say, oh, no adverse action was taken, so you don't get a hearing?
It is like a police officer turning on the sirens, pulling you over, writing you a massive ticket. But the second you ask for your day in traffic court, they say, oh, well, I didn't actually write the ticket in pen, so you have no right to a trial. But you still owe me the money.
That is wild. It really highlights a massive loophole in administrative power.
It does. An authority can issue terrifying threats to compel your compliance. But if you demand due process, they just retract the formal nature of those threats to avoid the hearing.
So they get the compliance pressure of enforcement without the procedural burden of actually defending their actions in front of anyone.
Exactly.
Wait, let me play devil's advocate here for just a moment. As guides to this material, we do need to look at the objective text from the HOA's side.
That's true. We need to be fair.
If people are secretly plugging dryers into unsafe wall vents and risking a massive condo fire, shouldn't the HOA have the right to aggressively enforce safety?
Even if they previously sent a sloppy email saying completed.
Yeah. Isn't the building's physical safety more important than a year-old clerical receipt?
It is a very fair point to raise, and we definitely must examine the HOA's stated rationale here. The mechanics of dryer vent fires in multifamily buildings are deeply, deeply serious.
Yeah, they're no joke.
Shared exhaust shafts can basically act like a chimney. A clogged or deteriorating legacy vent inside a wall can ignite lint, sending fire rapidly between units.
Which is terrifying in a condo.
The HOA claims in their updates that they realized they just couldn't trust residents who were using the temporary $18 indoor setups.
Right, because they state that some owners were secretly plugging their dryers back into the unsafe wall vents anyway.
Which creates an immediate high risk of fire, injury, or death.
Precisely.
So the HOA argues that a permanent, legally recorded title agreement was absolutely necessary to ensure long-term safety.
They needed something attached to the deed so that if a unit is sold, the new buyer knows exactly what the safety requirements are.
Right. And from an objective standpoint, protecting a building from fire is arguably the primary fiduciary duty of an HOA board.
It is. But this brings us to Ra's perspective, which
Yeah.
is laid out so clearly in that draft podcast script she wrote to document her ordeal.
Yeah, she writes it almost like a radio play, right?
Yeah.
Analyzing her own correspondence.
She does. And honestly, she doesn't deny that owners have maintenance responsibilities or that fire safety matters.
No, her argument hinges on something entirely different. She argues that what is actually happening here is issue shifting.
Yes, she points out the specific timing of all this. Whenever she pressed the HOA for their insurance documents regarding the water damage,
Or whenever she demanded action on the common plumbing lines.
or asked for mediation over the mold destroying her unit. Right when she did those things, the HOA leaned heavily into the dryer vent violation.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, Roz is detailing a classic case of selective enforcement.
Let's explain how that mechanism works for the listener.
Sure. Selective enforcement occurs when a perfectly valid neutral rule, like a fire safety protocol, is wielded aggressively against a specific individual who is already in a legal or administrative conflict with the organization.
Right. The safety rule itself is real and necessary.
But the application of the rule is used as a pressure tactic to drain the individual's resources, or just force them into submission on a completely different issue.
And in her script, Roz views the entire sequence of events as an administrative weapon.
From her point of view, the HOA used a safety mandate to basically bury her complaints about the building's water infrastructure.
When they pressured her with daily fines, it functioned exactly like hardline enforcement.
But the moment she demanded her legal rights and pointed to her written receipt, it suddenly became just a clarification with no adverse action.
She is basically fighting against an administrative process that shifts its own rules, denies timely hearings, and changes the definition of compliance retroactively.
It's exhausting just reading about it.
It really is. So what does this all mean for you listening to this right now? Why does Unit 108 at the Countryside at Cumberland Condominium actually matter to your life?
I think the profound lesson here goes far beyond just keeping your receipts.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes, Roz did everything right from a documentation standpoint. Having the photos and the October 2024 email is exactly what allowed her to mount a defense when the law firm came knocking.
But the deeper takeaway is understanding how bureaucracies behave when they are trapped by their own paper trail.
Because bureaucracies don't fight facts. They change definitions.
That is the big insight to take away from this. When you point out a contradiction in their paperwork, they don't say, oh, you're right, we made a mistake.
No, they redefine the terms. Completed becomes temporary.
A multi-page legal threat of $100 daily fines becomes no adverse action.
Whether you're dealing with a homeowners association, a corporate HR department, or a local municipality, you really must recognize this mechanism.
When an institution has authority, it often has the power to just dictate the dictionary it operates from.
Which is a scary thought.
You can jump through every single hoop, get the confirmation in writing, follow the map perfectly, but the organization can still secretly redraw the borders while you are sleeping.
Very well said.
I want to leave you with this provocative thought to ponder today. If a written, documented confirmation from a management authority saying an issue is completed doesn't actually protect you from future violations and massive daily fines on that exact same issue, at what point does administrative compliance become a game that is literally impossible to win?
It really is a question that challenges the very foundation of how we interact with authority.
It makes you wonder. Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Keep a close eye on your paperwork and an even closer eye on how the rules are defined.